My parents lied about their affair for years, and now I just found out they had a child together. They want me to accept him as my brother like nothing happened. I always thought my parents were the definition of the perfect couple. They'd been married for over 30 years, and from the outside, everything seemed picture perfect. I'm 29, and I grew up believing they were the kind of parents everyone wished they had. They hardly ever fought, they were supportive, and they made family their #1 priority. Or at least, that's what I thought. But recently, my entire world came crashing down when I learned the truth, a truth they had been hiding for years. It turns out my parents weren't as perfect as they seemed. A few months ago, I received a message on Facebook from a boy I'd never met before. His name was Ryan, and he claimed to be my brother. At first, I thought it was some sort of scam or prank. There was no way I had a brother I didn't know about, right? But as I read his message, my stomach dropped. He told me that he had been born out of an affair between my mom and a man she'd been seeing for years. He had proof too, photos of my mom and his father together, and even a copy of his birth certificate with my mom's name on it. I felt sick. My mom had an affair. This had to be some kind of mistake. I immediately called her, heart racing, my mind spinning. When she answered, I couldn't even form the words. "Mom, who is Ryan?" I finally blurted out, and the silence on the other end of the phone told me everything I needed to know. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to explain. All she said was, "We need to talk in person." I agreed, but in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my family started to crumble. How could they have kept something this big from me for so long? The next day, I met my parents at their house, and the atmosphere was heavy, tense. My mom looked like she hadn't slept, and my dad wouldn't make eye contact with me. I didn't waste time. What's going on? Is it true? Is Ryan really my brother? I asked, my voice shaking. My dad sighed, and my mom's eyes filled with tears. "It's true," my mom said quietly. "Ryan is your half-brother. I had an affair with his father years ago, and we've been trying to figure out how to tell you." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My parents had lied to me my entire life. They had pretended everything was fine, all while hiding this massive secret. I felt like I didn't even know who they were anymore. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice rising in anger. "Why would you keep something like this from me?" My mom started to cry, and my dad finally spoke up. "We didn't know how. We were scared of how you'd react," he said. "We thought we could protect you by keeping it a secret." But all I could think about was how much they had betrayed me. The worst part wasn't even the affair. It was the fact that they had a child together, a child they had kept hidden from me for years. Ryan was 16 now, and they wanted me to just accept him as part of the family. Like nothing had happened. "We want you to meet him," my mom said, her voice shaky. "He's a good kid. He wants to know his family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They wanted me to just welcome him into my life as if everything was normal, as if they hadn't lied to me for almost 2 decades. I couldn't take it. I left their house in a daze, feeling like my entire world had been turned upside down. I didn't know what to do. How could they expect me to be okay with this? How could they have kept something so huge from me for so long? I felt betrayed, not just by their lies, but by the fact that they had hidden an entire person from me, a brother I never knew existed. I spent the next few days in a fog, barely able to focus on work or anything else. My phone kept buzzing with messages from my mom, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Finally, after days of avoiding them, I agreed to meet Ryan. I didn't want to. I was angry, hurt, confused, but part of me felt like I had to see him. I had to know who this kid was, the boy who had unknowingly been part of my family all along. We met at a cafe, and when he walked in, I immediately saw the resemblance. He looked like my mom. Same eyes, same smile. It was unnerving. Ryan was nervous, I could tell. He sat down across from me, fidgeting with his hands, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "So, you're my brother?" I said, still not quite believing the words. Ryan nodded, his voice quiet. "I guess so," he said, glancing down at the table. "I didn't know about you until a few years ago. My dad never told me anything until recently." I could feel the weight of his words. He was just as lost in this mess as I was. "Look, I don't know what you expect from me," I told him honestly. "This is a lot." He nodded again, biting his lip. "I know. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to meet you. I've never had siblings." It was hard not to feel for him. He was just a kid, caught in the middle of a situation he didn't ask for. I could tell he was just as confused as I was, but it didn't change the fact that my parents had lied to me. They had created this mess, and now they were expecting me to just be okay with it. I don't know if I can do this, I said, more to myself than to Ryan. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. Maybe you don't have to decide right away, he said softly. After that meeting, I didn't know what to think. Ryan seemed like a good kid, but I couldn't shake the anger I felt toward my parents. How could they have lied to me for so long? How could they have kept this entire part of their lives hidden from me? I confronted them again, this time angrier than before. You lied to me for years, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. You had a whole other child, and you didn't think I had the right to know. My mom started crying again, and my dad tried to explain. But I wasn't interested in hearing their excuses. We were going to tell you, my dad said. We just didn't know when the right time would be. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The right time? I repeated, incredulous. He's 16. When were you planning on telling me? On his 18th birthday? When he showed up at my doorstep out of nowhere? My mom wiped her eyes and whispered, We were scared, honey. We didn't want to hurt you. But the truth was, they had hurt me more by keeping this secret than they ever would have by telling me the truth. I spent the next few weeks trying to wrap my head around everything. Part of me wanted to cut my parents out of my life completely. How could I trust them after this? How could I believe anything they said anymore? But another part of me couldn't just walk away. They were still my parents, and despite everything, I still loved them. But that didn't mean I could just forgive them. The betrayal was too deep. The lies had gone on for too long. Every time I looked at them, all I could think about was how much they had hidden from me. Ryan reached out to me again a few weeks later. He wanted to meet up again, and I agreed, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe I felt bad for him. Maybe I was just trying to make sense of everything. We met at the same cafe, and this time, the conversation flowed a little easier. Ryan told me more about his life, how he had grown up with just his dad, how he had always wondered why his mom wasn't in the picture. I used to think it was my fault, he admitted, looking down at his coffee. Like maybe I had done something wrong. I didn't know what to say to that. It broke my heart to hear him talk like that. But at the same time, I couldn't just forget about everything my parents had done. It wasn't your fault, I finally said. This whole situation, it's messed up. But it's not your fault. Ryan gave me a small, sad smile, and for the first time, I felt a connection to him. He was my brother after all, whether I liked it or not. But that didn't make everything okay. It didn't make the betrayal any less painful. I still didn't know how to move forward with my parents. In the weeks that followed, I tried to avoid my parents as much as possible. I needed space. I needed time to figure out how I felt. But they didn't give up. My mom kept calling, kept texting, trying to explain, trying to apologize. But I wasn't ready to hear it. Every time I thought about what they had done, the anger bubbled up inside me again. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the lies. The years of pretending everything was fine, when in reality, they had been hiding a huge part of their lives from me. One day, my mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. I wasn't ready to talk, but she was desperate. Please just listen to me, she begged as I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. We made a mistake, a huge mistake, but we were trying to protect you. We didn't want to lose you. I let her in reluctantly, and we sat down at the kitchen table. She told me everything, how the affair started, how she had tried to end it. But it had gone on for years. She told me about the guilt, how every day she had wanted to tell me the truth, but she couldn't. I was a coward, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want to hurt you, so I kept lying, and the longer it went on, the harder it became to tell you. I know I've lost your trust, and I don't know if I'll ever get it back, but I'm begging you to give us a chance. Give Ryan a chance. I didn't know what to say. I was still angry. I was still hurt. But seeing my mom like that, so broken, so desperate, it softened something in me. I couldn't forgive her, not yet, but maybe I could try. After that conversation, I started seeing my parents again, but things were never the same. The trust was broken, and I didn't know if it would ever be fully repaired. We had family dinners, but there was always an unspoken tension hanging over us. Every time I looked at them, I was reminded of the lies, of the betrayal. But I was trying. We were all trying. And slowly, I began to rebuild a relationship with Ryan too. He was a good kid, and it wasn't his fault he had been born into this mess. He deserved a chance, even if I wasn't sure how to give it to him. One weekend, Ryan invited me to a soccer game he was playing in. I almost didn't go. I didn't know if I was ready to fully integrate him into my life like that. But in the end, I went. As I sat on the sidelines watching him play, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions: pride, sadness, confusion. He was my brother, but he was also a stranger. How was I supposed to reconcile those two things? How was I supposed to accept him into my life when I was still so angry at the way he had come into it? Over time, though, I started to accept that this was my new reality. Ryan was my brother, whether I liked it or not. My parents had messed up big time, but they were still my parents. Cutting them out of my life wasn't going to fix anything. Slowly, I began to let my guard down. I spent more time with Ryan, getting to know him, learning about his life. He wasn't just a reminder of my parents' betrayal. He was a person with hopes and dreams and insecurities just like me. And I couldn't blame him for what had happened. It wasn't his fault. One night after dinner at my parents' house, I found myself sitting alone with Ryan in the living room. My parents had gone to bed, and we were just sitting there, not really talking. "Do you think we'll ever feel like real siblings?" Ryan asked quietly, not looking at me. His question caught me off guard, and for a moment, I didn't know how to answer. "I don't know," I finally said honestly. "But maybe we don't have to. Maybe we can just figure it out as we go." Ryan nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, maybe." As the months passed, I slowly started to feel more at peace with everything. My parents and I were still working on rebuilding our relationship, but it was getting better little by little. I still had moments of anger, moments where I couldn't believe they had lied to me for so long, but those moments were fewer and farther between. And my relationship with Ryan, it was complicated, but it was growing. We weren't the kind of siblings who had grown up together, who shared childhood memories, but we were figuring out how to be in each other's lives. And that was enough for now. One afternoon, I took Ryan to the park just to hang out and talk. We walked around, and he told me more about his life, about his dreams of becoming a photographer. It was strange getting to know him like this, like a friend rather than a sibling. But I liked it. He was a good kid, and I found myself caring about him more than I expected. As we sat down on a bench, Ryan looked over at me and said, "I'm really glad I reached out to you." His words hit me harder than I expected. "Me too," I said quietly. It wasn't easy, but I was starting to let go of some of the anger I had been holding on to for so long. My parents had lied to me, yes, but they were trying to make things right. They were trying to rebuild our family, and I had to give them credit for that. I couldn't pretend everything was okay, and I couldn't forget what they had done, but I could try to move forward. I could try to heal, and part of that healing was accepting Ryan into my life, not as a reminder of my parents' betrayal, but as my brother. Eventually, I found myself spending more time with both Ryan and my parents. We started having regular family dinners again, and though it wasn't perfect, it was something. It was progress. I still had moments where the old anger flared up, where I wanted to scream at my parents for what they had done. But those moments didn't last as long as they used to. I was learning to let go. I was learning to accept that life is messy, that people make mistakes, and that sometimes forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about moving forward despite it. One evening after dinner, my dad pulled me aside. He looked nervous, like he wasn't sure how to start. "I just want to say, thank you," he said, his voice quiet, "for giving us a chance, for giving Ryan a chance." I didn't know what to say. Part of me still wanted to be angry at him, but another part of me understood that he was trying, that they were both trying. "It's not easy," I admitted, "but I'm trying." He nodded, his eyes filled with emotion. "I know, and I'm so grateful. We messed up, and I know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're trying." Hearing my dad say those words softened something in me. It didn't erase the pain, but it made it easier to keep moving forward. My parents were flawed, just like everyone else, and they had made some huge mistakes. But they were still my parents, and I still loved them. That love was complicated now, tangled up with anger and betrayal, but it was still there. And maybe in time, we could rebuild something stronger. Maybe in time, we could find a way to be a family again, not the same as before, but something new, something different. A few months later, I attended one of Ryan's photography exhibits. It was a small event, but it was a big deal for him, and I wanted to be there to support him. As I walked through the gallery, looking at the photos he had taken, I realized how much had changed. A year ago, I didn't even know Ryan existed. Now I was here, at his exhibit, proud of him in a way I never expected to be. I had gone from feeling betrayed and lost to finding a new kind of family, one I hadn't asked for but was starting to accept. Ryan spotted me from across the room and came over, a shy smile on his face. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice soft. "It means a lot. I smiled back, feeling a warmth in my chest that hadn't been there before. Of course, I said, "I'm proud of you." And I meant it. In that moment, I realized that Ryan wasn't just a reminder of my parents' mistakes. He was my brother. He was part of my family, and I was starting to see that maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all. As time went on, things between my parents and me continued to improve. We still had our ups and downs, and there were still moments where the old wounds resurfaced, but we were getting through it. We were learning how to be a family again, even if it looked different than it had before. I had to let go of the idea that my parents were perfect. They weren't. They were flawed, just like everyone else. But they were trying, and I was trying, and that was enough. Slowly but surely, we were finding a way forward. Eventually, I came to a place of acceptance. I accepted that my parents had made mistakes, and I accepted that Ryan was a part of my life now. It wasn't the family I had grown up with, but it was my family nonetheless. We were all working to heal, to rebuild, and that was enough for me. I didn't need everything to be perfect. I just needed us to keep moving forward, one step at a time. I also realized that part of moving forward meant letting go of the anger I had been holding on to for so long. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I still struggled with it, but I was learning to forgive. Not just my parents, but myself too. I had spent so much time feeling betrayed, feeling hurt, that I hadn't allowed myself to heal. But now I was starting to see that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about accepting what had happened and finding a way to move on. And that's what I was doing. I was moving on. Ryan and I continued to build our relationship. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments where I still felt a pang of resentment, but those moments were fewer now. We had grown closer, and I had started to see him not just as the product of my parents' mistakes, but as my brother. He was a good kid, and he had been through a lot. We both had, but we were figuring it out together, and in the end, that was all that mattered. One night, as I sat at home reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized how much had changed in such a short amount of time. My life had been turned upside down by a secret I never saw coming, but somehow I had come out the other side stronger. My relationship with my parents would never be the same, but it didn't have to be. We were building something new, something different, and that was okay. I had found a way to forgive them, to forgive Ryan, and most importantly, to forgive myself, and in the end, that was all I needed. Now when I look at my family, I see something imperfect but real. We've been through hell and back, but we're still here. We're still standing. And while things may never go back to the way they were, we found a new way to be a family. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And that's enough for me. I've learned that family isn't about perfection. It's about sticking together through the mess, through the mistakes, and finding a way to move forward. And that's exactly what we're doing. Ryan and I have grown closer than I ever thought possible. He's my brother, and I'm proud to call him that. Our relationship isn't based on years of shared childhood memories, but it's built on something just as strong: resilience, forgiveness, and a willingness to move forward. We still have our ups and downs, but we're figuring it out. And that's all I can ask for. As for my parents, we're still healing, still working through the scars of the past, but I know we'll get there. It won't be easy, but I'm ready to face whatever comes next. In the end, I've learned that life is messy, people are flawed, and families are complicated. But despite all of that, we can still find a way to move forward. We can still find a way to forgive, to heal, and to grow. My parents lied to me for years, and that hurt. But we're moving past it. We're rebuilding one step at a time. And while it may not look like the family I grew up with, it's still my family. And I've learned that's more than enough. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize that I wouldn't trade this journey for anything. It's made me stronger, it's made me wiser, and it's taught me the true meaning of family. It's not about perfection. It's about love, forgiveness, and the willingness to keep moving forward, even when things get tough. I'm proud of where we are now. We've been through so much, but we're still standing. And in the end, that's all that matters. We're a family, flaws and all, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So now when I look at Ryan, I don't just see the product of my parents' affair. I see my brother. I see someone who's become a part of my life in ways I never expected. And I'm grateful for that. Life didn't turn out the way I thought it would, but maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what makes it so beautiful. We're still figuring things out, but we're doing it together. And for the first time in a long time, I feel at peace with that.